Welcome to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private.
Hello everyone, my name is Oliver and I'm a former addict in recovery. Welcome to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private. The Recovery Cast is a podcast created by people in recovery from addiction for people in recovery from addiction. There are many definitions of addiction, but we keep it simple. Addiction to us is when people use alcohol, drugs or certain behaviours repetitively to their detriment. Basically, when it's a problem for them and their families. Therefore, an addict is not necessarily someone using a needle in a dark laneway, and an alcoholic is not necessarily a homeless man in a park. Recovery for us means using an active daily process or program to deal with alcohol use disorder, substance use disorder, or other behavioural addictions. People in recovery are committed to complete abstinence. This daily process is as important to being able to live normal lives as daily dialysis is for people with kidney problems. This podcast is meant as a support tool for those in recovery. I myself am a recovering drug addict, however, each day we will focus on a different perspective of recovery. Everyone who participates in the podcast is in an active recovery program. We are not affiliated with any one recovery methodology and will focus on a variety of different types of recovery, including 12-step recovery programs such as Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and other things like Smart Recovery, Celebrate Recovery, Recovery Dharma, Cognitive Behavioural Therapy, and more. And a quick disclaimer, this podcast is intended to be informative. A podcast alone cannot support your sobriety and recovery, so we suggest it only as one component of a daily recovery routine. For more information on what recovery is, please go to www.rehab.melbourne. We have an interesting episode planned for you today. Today's episode is on November the 18th, and we're reading out of the Just for Today Narcotics Anonymous daily reading book. And today's reading is on self-discovery. The 10th step can help us correct our living problems and prevent their recurrence. Basic text, page 42. Our identities, how we think and feel, have been shaped by our experiences. Some of our experiences have made us better people. Others have caused us shame or embarrassment. All of them have influenced who we are today. We can take advantage of the knowledge gained in examining our mistakes, using this wisdom to guide the decisions we'll make today. Acceptance of ourselves means accepting all aspects of ourselves, our assets, our defects, our successes, and our failures. Shame and guilt left unaddressed can paralyze us, preventing us from moving forward in our lives. Some of the most meaningful amends we can make for the mistakes of our past are made simply by acting differently today. We strive for improvement and measure our success by comparing who we used to be with who we are now. Being human, we will continue making mistakes. However, we need not make the same ones over and over again. By looking over our past and realizing that we have changed and grown, we'll find hope for the future. The best is yet to come. Just for today, I will do the best I can with what I have today. Each day, I'll learn something new that will help me tomorrow. What a reading. That's awesome. Really, really nice reading. It's a bit of step 10, I think, which we haven't really discussed in depth yet. The 10th step is we continue to take inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So it's literally just continuing to have that self-inquiry of how have I behaved, what have I done, and when we work out or realise that we did something wrong, we make an amends for it, or we just don't do it again, or we try and learn from it, repair whatever damage was caused, if any. And I think, look, I'll unpack this reading from my experience bit by bit. So my identity, how I think and feel, has been shaped by my experiences. That's who we are has been shaped by, our upbringings, our experiences growing up, our experiences in the past. Some of the experiences have made us better people, and the other experiences, maybe they've caused us some shame or embarrassment, but they're all influencing who we are today. So I can totally agree with that. Some of my experiences have I learned behaviors through my experiences, and some of that stuff was control or fear or just different things, and I take advantage of the knowledge gained in examining my mistakes, basically, and that guides what I do today. So I look at, my past mistakes and the things that I've done, and I realize, well, I get an idea of who I am as a person, and that just arms me with a little bit of awareness about who I am and what I do today. And for example, the one I always bring up is when something happens that I don't like, I don't react in a negative way. I stop and I try to find some acceptance to accept the situation that something is going on that I can't control. And then I try and move forward and respond to it in an effective way that doesn't make my life worse even further, which is what I used to do all the time. And it says acceptance of ourselves means accepting all aspects of ourselves. So I've got assets, I've got defects, I sure do, successes and failures. Shame and guilt left unaddressed can paralyze us. So I think, what they're getting at is if we don't deal with this shame and guilt, then often we can kind of, it paralyzes us and stops us actually working through it and growing as people and move forward with our life. So that's what the steps are for, and that's what, step 10 is. Sometimes you do have to address these things, even though they're a little bit scary sometimes. That for me, when I was doing my steps and going through that period of self-discovery, it was actually a little bit terrifying, but I was willing to do it because I had experienced the alternative of trying to block it out using substances. And, that was just definitely not something. I tried that, didn't work, so I was going to try something new. So all of this self-inquiry and inventory stuff, I gave it a go, and I found it did work for me. I certainly do strive for improvement. That's what they're talking about, and measure my success by comparing who I used to be with who I am now. Ooh, that's great. I just try and do my best. I strive for improvement. I just do my best. And I find that now that I'm in recovery and I'm working a recovery program, I always look back at who I used to be and the things I used to do and compare them to today. Like, I'm always kicking goals today in comparison to what I used to do in active addiction, and also earlier on in my recovery. It says the best is yet to come. It just keeps getting better. So who I was in recovery 2 years ago, I made mistakes back then. Even though I was 2 years clean, I actually still hadn't learnt the skills that I have today, another 2 years down the track. So it's a constant thing, and that's it. It's self-discovery. When I'm not intoxicated, I learn and grow, and I have that willingness to learn and grow. And it says just for today, I will do the best I can with what I have today. So, frankly, I don't care where you're at in your recovery. You are doing the best with what you have today, right now, and that is enough. I'm here to tell you that is enough. As long as you do the best you can, then, surely that just brings hope that you're doing your best, and it might be a struggle, but you're getting there, That's all I did. I just did my best, and I was willing to do my best. So, my best for me, 4 years ago was to agree to go into treatment. My best 3 years ago was to work the steps and try and look at my behavior. My best 2 years ago was to look at my behavior and realize that even though I'd been in recovery for a while, I was still making mistakes, and how can I learn from them, And I'm really interested to see, down the track, what I actually learn from my behaviors that I'm making right now in my life. Maybe I'll even grow even more, and that's it. The best is yet to come. It keeps getting better. As long as we are not sabotaging ourselves in active addiction and making our own lives worse, which is what I sure as heck used to do, it just means that things will continue to improve and get better. So I'm going to leave that reading there. I want to talk about stigma. Stigma. I was looking at an advertisement for a TV program about addiction, and when I was looking at it, it was an ad on social media, and there was a comment section. Ooh, comment sections, amazing. I saw this comment, everyone's addicted to something. And, it just made me think of this stigma around addiction and, the negative impacts that it can have on people, like preventing them from reaching out for help, and all the shame that we feel as people who had or, are recovering from substance abuse disorders. So we're going to talk a little bit about that after the break.
You're listening to the Recovery Cast by Hills and Rangers Private. Now playing daily on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. For more shows, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.
I'm reading from a website called scientificamerican.com. So this is, I basically did a bunch of, just a little bit of research onto like stigma around addiction. I Googled it and I was provided with a whole bunch of, shall we say, just articles, journal articles, scientific publications. Some of them were actually advertisements for treatment centres, just about what stigma actually does to people. And the reason I was sort of inspired to do an episode on stigma is because of that comment section and some of the things that people were saying. That whole everyone's addicted to something totally minimizes our experience as people who are really, really suffering, from this disorder. It's a scientific disorder. It's not some sort of moral weakness, which is what I think is definitely like that's the stigma, is that addiction is a choice and that we choose to do this because we are bad people or we're weak people. And, that I just want to debunk that and talk about what's really going on with that. I'm reading from this website. There must be wider recognition that susceptibility to the brain changes in addiction is substantially influenced by factors outside an individual's control, such as genetics and the environment in which one is born and raised, and that medical care is often necessary to facilitate recovery as well as to avert the worst outcomes, such as overdose. When people with addiction are stigmatized and rejected, especially by those in healthcare, it only contributes to the vicious cycle that makes their disease so entrenched. That really sums it up. And look, I don't believe that an individual struggles with addiction is their fault. I think that's a load of horseradish. These factors such as genetics, the fact that some people are more predisposed to addictive behaviours than others, and the fact that people have these experiences, which is what we're talking about. Our identities, how we think and feel, have been shaped by our experiences, the environment in which we're born and raised. And it's interesting. I didn't come from a broken home, I didn't come from anything like that, but I still ended up with an addiction problem, and it's much deeper than just something like having a tumultuous upbringing. I think basically it doesn't really matter how we came to be addicted in the first place. I think, I just want to talk about I always talk about what I'm willing to do about my problem and how there is hope and that there is help out there. And that's where Hills and Rangers Private comes in. Definitely, without that sort of that first port of call of accepting treatment, it's very, very difficult to get into recovery, and that's my experience. I needed to go to rehab. I guess that stigma is that, somebody said everyone's addicted to something. Sure, people spend too much time using their phones. People drink too much on the weekend. People eat too much unhealthy food. But the thing about all those things is, you are not going to wake up not knowing what you did last night because of spending too much time on your phone. People who drink too much on the weekend, well, there's definitely, it's definitely a sliding scale, and, unhealthy behavior is, it's dangerous, but for me, like, it wasn't just a weekend thing, it was an all day, everyday thing. And that's the difference, I think, you know, for people who say everyone's addicted to something, well, I disagree. And I think that, you know, like, my behaviour was so harmful that you can't minimise that and say everybody's got that problem. It's a serious medical issue and it needs to be treated as such. You know, not saying everybody's got this problem. Well, no. You know, not everybody needs to go into treatment, but look, if you do, then that's okay too. We need to break down that stigma. And as part of the ad for this TV show, there was a woman being interviewed who was really upset. She was explaining how she was drinking in the morning, she was drinking when she was at work, and she was drinking at night. And it was just to prevent, you know, feeling sick and just to get by. You know, that sort of stuff is incredibly stigmatized. And talking about what stigma is, people who are affected by this stigma are often just the people who are suffering themselves. We feel shame and we don't ask for help. Because I felt like definitely that I was going to be judged for, you know, the fact that, you know, what I was doing. I was going to be judged, and I very much felt like I was on the outskirts of society, and I felt more isolated. And I had that internalized stigma that I had really low self-esteem and self-worth, and I think that sort of brought about this vicious cycle of continuing my behaviour in addiction and not getting help. And the first time when I actually began to have that stigma and that feeling, you know, broken down by the people around me was when I actually accepted help for the first time. You know, I was told by my sister, who has come on the show previously, that, you know, I had a problem and I wasn't well and I just needed to get help. And that's when I first accepted the possibility that I needed help. At Hills and Ranges Private, I'm looking at all these things that break down stigma that you know, the staff at Hills and Ranges Private provide. There's compassion, there's support, there is zero judgment. And, you know, we just have to see the person for who they are and not the fact that they're not well. You know, we have to treat them with dignity and respect. And I find that, and I see that when I am at the chalet at Hills and Ranges Private, that there's this understanding and there's no negative attitudes towards addiction. It's just a health issue that needs to be treated, and it's treated with evidence-based facts. And you know what's amazing? The biggest thing to help break down that stigma is that the staff at Hills and Ranges Private are all in recovery themselves. They all have that lived experience, and they're encouraged to share their experience with the guests at Hills and Ranges Private. And that just breaks down the stigma to say, well, you know, I was like this and I did this, and I'm well now and I'm in recovery, and my life's, you know, is continuing. And as it says in the reading, the best is yet to come. So, you know, this stigma can be so harmful because it prevents people from actually reaching out to help. There's so much shame already involved in addiction. But if we break down that stigma, let's put it this way. If I had if I had tonsillitis, let's say, I'd go to a doctor, I'd have a course of antibiotics, and then I would feel better. If it recurred, then perhaps I might have to have an operation to have my tonsils removed. It's a medical issue. It's not because the person is weak that, oh, you just can't control your tonsils, you just keep getting them infected, whatever. You know, how ridiculous. It's a health issue, and that there is hope, you know, that we may yet see a society where you know, somebody's struggling with addictive behaviour, so they go and get treatment, you know, and you can be a part of that. If you're thinking about the fact that you might need help or someone you love needs help, please go to www.rehab.melbourne and speak to these compassionate, supportive and judgment-free staff. That's my my recommendation for this episode. And if you're already in recovery, then congratulations to you. You know, I encourage you to keep working along this path of self-discovery through continuing to grow and work your recovery program. Look at your behavior and try and move forward. It's what I did, and my life is so different to what it used to be. And you know what? The best is yet to come. So thank you for listening to another episode of the Recovery Cast, proudly brought to you by Hills and Ranges Private. I will see you soon on another episode. Have a lovely day. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Recovery Cast. For more, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.